first panel is about fan monetization, fan engagement, and I'd like to just have each of you guys introduce yourselves.
My name is Chris Mendez. I'm VP of Ecosystem for a startup called Pixelynx. It was founded by deadmau5, Richie Houghton, and a couple other EDM legends. Our primary aim is to build towards the music metaverse. Sometimes we call it the musicverse. And we recently just launched a platform that enables sort of the UGC community, the user-generated content community, to actually generate their own music using generative AI.
My name is Shamal Ranasinghe. I'm Chief Business Officer of Audius. Audius is a decentralized music service and discovery platform. We give artists the ability to connect with their fans, build their audience, and make more money for their music, giving them the ability to set their pricing and control access to that music, and cultivate deeper fan engagements.
Hi, I'm Chris Sealey. I'm the SVP and Creative Director at OneOf. We are a Web3 software company that brings artists and fans closer together and brings brands and consumers closer together. We were founded in partnership with Quincy Jones, so our roots and our heart are very much in music. And we've been working a lot in the brand space recently, but a lot of what you're going to see from us over the coming weeks and months is actually a real push towards creator tools and enablement of independent artists. You know, we've created some of the biggest NFT and digital collectible releases for mainstream global artists and indies alike. And as you mentioned, Vickie, you know, we really think the power of creating and deepening relationships through Web3 is best suited for independent artists. So that's where you're going to see a lot of our efforts going forward.
That's great. I mean, I think part of the reason why we all feel very strongly about the independent community is not only that there is more of a natural relationship between fans and independent artists. There's more passion there. It's not like, you know, when you're going to get Lady Gaga tickets, you know that you're one of, millions. But I think if you think of smaller clubs and you think of relationships, you might want to get closer to the fan. That's really, really vibrant in the independent label and indie music community. But from a rights standpoint and the flexibility, there's way more overlap with indie labels on the sound recording and the publishing side. And that just gives you much more flexibility to be able to do things in an experimental fashion. So let's go in a little bit deeper on how each of your platforms work, because I think the details are really, really important for everyone to understand. And Chris, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure.
There's two Chris's.
This Chris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris at Pixelynx. So talk a little bit about, expand a bit on what you just explained, so that people understand how it's functioning.
Sure. So the product is available today. You can go to KORUS, chorus with the K, .co, and within that website, you'll be able to see a link to click on this AI companion, which we call a core. Think of sort of as a music metaverse, we kind of intersect in three different sort of industries. One is gaming, one is blockchain or Web3 is kind of now the more modern way of saying. But we also introduce generative AI or AI. And for context, in terms of my background, I've been doing AI for 5 years, Alexa AI and Meta. So within this website that you go to, you'll start off with an AI companion. So our vision of AI is that you have this companion that can help you and do things that are really superpowers. And in our world, we think that the user-generated community is an audience that's always been vilified for many, many years. They want to remix, they want to do interesting things, they download a YouTube video, they add some funny memes and jokes, re-upload it, and suddenly it's getting taken down by Content ID, for example. And sort of we believe that the user-generated community is the biggest part of the gaming world, but also can be paralleled with the Web3 world, where you kind of just have a lot of the same behaviors and a lot of the same fandom along the way. And so what we wanted to do was make it possible for the UGC community, that's kind of how we refer to them, as a way, how can we give them a viable way to make music without having to go get a music degree, without having to learn Logic, without having to learn Ableton? Can we just help them actually do something and really give them a superpower? And as that first product, using this little AI companion, you can basically create your own song in about 2 minutes. It's an original song. It was created using stem files from our in-house team that creates royalty-free stems. But we're really believing that the future for us is to grow working with other labels who are interested in licensing those stem files that can then be used to create derivative works or remixes. And since sort of a lot of our company's sort of DNA is in the sort of DJ space, remixing is kind of how we think about it. But I guess what's unique about us is we want to really work with, very forward-thinking labels that are open to stem files being a way of licensing.
And Shamal, why don't you talk a bit about Audius? I think probably a lot of people have heard about Audius, but may not know the latest.
Sure thing. So Audius, anybody can check it out at audius.co. It's a decentralized music service. So the way to think about it is comparing it to a centralized music service where, for example, a Spotify or an Apple or whoever, they create all the capabilities of powering that service, and they make the decisions and control how that service operates. They capture all the enterprise value, and they can also change their mind in terms of changing the way their API works, making decisions based on what's good for them versus what's good for their community. For example, deciding to provide direct upload for their artists and then changing their mind when their major label partners decided that they didn't want to actually have that service offer that capability. So in a decentralized platform like Audius, the community owns that platform and governs it so that everything that is built for the network in Audius is voted upon by the community of artists and fans and developers. And anybody in the network can decide to create something, put it up for a vote, and if it's approved, it becomes part of this open protocol. And you can only really enable that in a decentralized manner, interoperating with the blockchain and having incentives and systems that are powered through the blockchain to have that kind of community-owned and governed approach. But when you're using Audius, we take great pains to abstract that all away. So when you create an account, artists and fans creating an account, they don't even know that the blockchain is there behind it all. Everything is built on chain, but when you create an account, there's a wallet that's created, and money can go from wallet to wallet. But users don't really see that happening in the front end. But when music is uploaded, it's stored on chain. Fan information is stored on chain. It's interoperable. Artists will be able to decide to make their content and their fan and their analytics available or not. They can keep it to themselves. So those are some of the ways in which we work with the principles of the blockchain and the values of Web3.
Before I start, I just want to say, Chris, I'm a DJ, and I had the most insane experience, which I think a lot of DJs do, is I was creating remixes of songs, some current, some from 40 years ago, songs sent to me by labels to make them popular, sent to me by the label, and then having the legal department of the label through SoundCloud shut my account down for using music that the promotional department of the label was begging me to play at gigs and begging me to put on SoundCloud. So I'm glad you're doing something with the idea of making culture your own. And I think that's what we do at OneOf. We started as a music NFT marketplace at the beginning. As you mentioned, these were highly transactable assets, and people believed that simply buying a Doja Cat NFT would immediately skyrocket in price, and for many people it did, and it increased people's personal value and the value of companies and even protocols. What we always believed was that we needed to make a deeper connection. The thing that we would talk about with these artists is, let's create a parasocial connection between you and fans. You're a giant global artist. You want fans to feel like they're sitting on the same side of the table with you. You want to sort of transform the value creation so that when they support you, they are also supported. The rising tide lifts all boats. But really, as an artist at that scale, you don't have the ability to do so for a variety of reasons that block you. And we would always focus on trying to create not just easy pathways. As you mentioned, from day one, our thesis was you need to be able to sign up in less than 2 minutes with a phone and an email, and that's it, or social. You need to be able to buy in dollars and cents, not crypto. We built this vast crypto tooling network so that you could combine any cryptocurrency to buy your assets, and 99% of people from now until today used cash. And we were one of the first platforms to actually take debit and credit. And so where we are now is sort of where we began. We always were telling these artists and these brands, hey, if you want to use this technology, the best way to use it is actually to create a actual social relationship with your fans so that they are part of the value chain. If you look at sort of the Taylor Swift unionization spoof or whatever it is that went across the internet, it's actually quite interesting because essentially, as ridiculous as some of the claims are and as unserious as it may be, there is this desire for fans to have a voice, to feel like that they're part of the process and to feel like they're part of the value chain. So that's what we've been doing with the various NFT drops. And as I mentioned earlier, while we still have a robust marketplace for collectibles, we did a $1 million Whitney Houston NFT, we did a Biggie project where they actually collectively own the rights to his most famous freestyle and are doing some major things with the music industry right now to create original works from that track that they will then monetize as a DAO. Really where we're going is giving independent artists this tool set. We have a thing called Creator Self-Mint, which is going to allow people to create digital collectibles for basically free at a scale that only very large corporations paying us millions of dollars would be able to do. And we have a variety of tools, unfortunately, that I can't talk about, which will actually very profoundly link the main drivers of revenue in the music industry, a lot of the big companies you're talking about, with artists, and put those artists and fans in the driver's seat so that they can monetize them more effectively, and so they can also collect first-party data. I think at the end of the day, if you look at any brand, they just want to develop an emotional connection with fans that's real because it gives them like a 300% greater lifetime value. Well, artists are very good at creating emotional connections because they're creating emotional work. But what they have a hard time doing, especially as an independent artist, is scaling that intimacy. And I think that's what Web3 can do because we're actually giving the power of choice, the power of ownership, and the types of things that you just don't get as a fan, sort of absent this new way of thinking.
It's so great to listen to all of you because I think that a couple connections that I want to make here of the way our world works now versus these companies that are either solving problems in our current world or opening up new opportunities is like with Pixelynx. This is really like there's a whole class of creators who are, I would call, casual creators, people who want to play around with music. They're not even probably motivated to sign up at CD Baby and TuneCore and have their music distributed. They just want to play around with it. They want to, they want to have tools. And Pixelynx is addressing that need. With Audius, we have seen over and over and over again the big platforms and how they can disintermediate artists and fans, and the algorithm changes, and all of a sudden everything that you were using is gone, and you have to restart all of that. With OneOf, there really are not that many ways for people to express fandom online now and to spend money and to be able to actually transact beyond I streamed your song. So I think the spectrum of opportunities in this collection of three companies also really shows these are new ways to engage and put the artists and the fans in a different kind of a relationship. So let's talk a little bit more about that. I think with OneOf, when you guys started this out, was it seemed like it was in the heyday of people really transacting, but you are really migrating more toward communities and talk a little bit about that transition.
I mean, ultimately, when you found a company in partnership with Quincy Jones in the music industry, you have trust. And for a lot of reasons, artists were wary of the NFT craze. And they worked with us because they felt like they could entrust us with their brand. And so we went out and we signed a bunch of deals with major artists, and they were almost like record deals. Like we were giving these insane advances We were putting out digital collectibles that were bought by fans. And by the way, even day one, during the time of Beeple selling, multi-million-dollar NFTs, we always felt that mass market consumerism was the key. So we always had price points as low as like $1 or $5, even at the time when it was really rarefied air in the collectibles world. And we would put out these projects. I, as the creative director, would sit down with these artists and we would figure out, how can we use Web3 to tell their story and bring the fans in, and then we would sell them. And if we're being honest, most of the people probably bought them because they thought of them as assets. It was like gold or a stock, but it was way more fun to own. And at the beginning, candidly, it was very difficult to convince artists. And I think we had better luck only because of Quincy and Adam Fell and some of our founders who really work with these artists every day in the non-Web3 space. It was tough to convince them to actually lean in and to provide engagement outside the digital world, because they thought, oh, I can just create my image in a cool 3D way, spin it around, make it video, and sell, and they could. But we said to them, listen, what you're doing, it doesn't seem like it because it's a 2-minute sign up, but what you are doing is the equivalent of when I give my 7-year-old son a wallet and I put something valuable in it and I say, hey, I want you to pay attention to that wallet. We now have a shared space. It's not an online account at an online retailer that I never go back to. It's a place where artists can continually surprise, delight, and reward their fans, and where the beginning of the artist-fan relationship is the artist giving the fans something that they find valuable emotionally, they believe will be valuable financially, and they're either ready to sit or flip, and they're very, very engaged. So you have this hyper-engaged fan, and you have this wallet that's going to travel with them wherever they go as the internet becomes more decentralized and as all of us go into our specific pockets of communities and of fans. And so you have this incredible connection, use it. And I think some of them did and some of them didn't. The ones who did, though, people like the Cool Kids, people like Manu, people like Masego, they really benefited even as the market slid, because they were essentially using this to create deeper fan engagement and intimacy at scale. And that was always the name of the game. And I think in many ways the market slide or the market vacillation or the market correction, depending on how you look at it, has refocused on what is important, which, you were saying, we're not going to get into the blockchain tech and the protocols, and I agree. No one in this room, even I, as the creative person, should not have to care about that, because we're all trying to drive business results, right, or results for artists. But the power of blockchain is giving people creative control, giving people a space in the value chain. Like if I'm an artist and you stream my song, well, that's the most passive expression of fandom ever. And as the fan, I don't get anything. I just get to hear the song. Well, I'm creating physical value for you, and more importantly, for Spotify. Why don't I get my piece of the puzzle? And so I think those core principles of blockchain, which is sort of recording value, seeing who your most engaged folks are, and then allowing you through this account that, again, travels with them, that is sort of what we're getting back to. And that's something that everything from the big artists now are recognizing to even the commercial brands. And another of the things that you'll see with us is we're starting to do a lot of work with very large brands and independent artists and using Web3 as the great equalizer. Because normally in that dynamic, the artists have no leverage, the fans have no leverage. It's brand sponsors artists. Fans think brand is cool because they sponsor an artist and we all go home. Now, with Web3, the power is shifting, and it's really deeper for the fans and for the artists and for the creators ultimately. So I think, listen, my personal net worth has shrank thanks to the constriction of the crypto economy. But I think it's a much more creative place to be than it was, a year ago when it was, a lot of easy money.
And Shamal, when Audius first started, I think a lot of people were kind of scratching their heads, like, is this a Spotify competitor? What is it? And I've watched the company evolve, and and it really does come down to this artist-fan engagement. But talk a little bit about the dynamics of what you're seeing in Audius.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So. You're correct. We're not a Spotify competitor. We're not trying to be a better Spotify. Spotify will be a better Spotify. We're not trying to ingest 150 million tracks and provide the celestial jukebox for lean back listening, as Chris mentioned, for passive fan engagement. We're really about those fans who want to participate, who want to lean in, and create something special with their artist. So on Audius, we have a really like thriving remix culture. So we have about 6.5 to 7 million monthly uniques. A lot of them participate in remixing. The artists will give their stems available for download, and when they are offering a remixing campaign, you can have anywhere from 50 to several hundred remixes uploaded for the artist to review. The artist can then approve them, co-sign them. They have a nice interface to see which ones are popular that the community members have voted up on. Some of these artists have taken these approved remixes and created compilations and redistributed them. And if you look at all the total streams of those remixes, they're anywhere between 30 to 90% of the lifetime spins of that track on Spotify. So it's just another way to kind of amplify promotional value of an artist's work through the participation of their fans who are leaning in and engaging. And so at Audius, we also have an audio token which we use to incentivize the behavior that we want to see on the platform. So you earn these tokens, artists and fans earn these tokens by doing things like filling out their profile, downloading our mobile app, listening consecutively throughout the course of the week, creating playlists, sharing, bringing on more people onto the platform. And then this little economy that's in Audius, they can start to send this token back and forth to each other, from fans to artists, artists to fans themselves. And I'll give a couple examples. Fans can send tokens to artists, and on the artist page, they will show which ones are the top supporters. And there's like a little gamification of it. Just the other day, I was notified that an artist that I'm supporting, RAC, I was a top supporter. I wanted to be the top supporter. I wanted him to see that I was a top supporter. Got a notification from that another fan had bumped me off the list. Was really annoyed about that. Stewed on it for a few days. Came back, anteed up, and then I became the top supporter again. And so there's that little gamification kind of model of it from a fan to an artist. But then artists are also using the tokens. Grammatic, a great electronic producer, DJ, he had tokens. He said, I'm going to give tokens, 20 tokens to each fan who reposts my newest track, so that he could get a boost in terms of promotional play and placement. And he did that, and that was another way for artists to compensate fans and have it be like a game. There was another artist that was trending on Audius, really loved it. He posted on Instagram, hey everybody, join Audius, use this link, and when you join, I'll send you a token. Even off Audius, there's really interesting dynamics with Web3. And I'll give another example. There's a great band out there, kind of a virtual artist band called Shredders. Shout out to Tom Wheely, who signed them and identified this kind of interesting new project where it's kind of anonymous band members rotating in and out of this virtual artist. And what they did is they gave a free mint. So all these fans can go and get something for free. Maybe they pay some marginal little bit of money for gas fees. But then you have this NFT that gives you access to their Discord. Anybody can join the Discord, but there's a special room for these NFT holders that can go into the Discord. And the band then was like, hey, we're going to create a cover art for our next single. What do you think of these three options? They voted on them. Then the band said, okay, well, here's some sketches of the cover art. They voted on them. And then the band gave them the final version of that cover art. And interesting things that you could do with this kind of technology with Shredders, what they've said is that any of the NFT holders, your NFT is going to change. It's going to evolve if we reach a certain threshold on Spotify in terms of play count. And so through an integration with Chainlink, they were able to identify or determine when that threshold was met, and then they changed the NFT. So it made it very interactive with the artists and fans. And also, NFT holders got special access to merch through their Shopify store. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can do with Web3, fan engagement, gamification, on Audius and elsewhere.
Yeah, Chris, let's hear a little bit more about Pixelynx.
Sure.
Chorus.
One thing just to kind of frame the context of, for example, even how I got into Web3. So before I worked at Web2, we'll call it, for many years, I actually worked in local nonprofit radio. And I did streaming on demand. That was a really big specialization that the team that I was working with, we basically mastered. And to kind of give you like my time there, what I remembered vividly about local nonprofit radio is that it's usually member subscribes, member donated. And so it's a local community who believes in this radio station and its curation, who are willingly giving $10 a month usually, or give or take, when they could be spending that money on Spotify, Apple Music, and so forth. And it always blew my mind away. I was like that's the beauty of local, right? Like that is the beauty of indie in that sense. And on the flip side, you have commercial radio, where you're perceived not to be giving anything, but what's really happening is advertisers are paying. And so in that model, someone taught me, if you're not paying, you're the product, because it's the advertiser who's the buyer. But in this sort of nonprofit model, when you're paying and giving, you are actually following that customer, the customer model if you're buying something. Web 2, for the most part, you're usually the product. And that's why people get so frustrated with Twitter when things modify, because it's like, I've been contributing, I've been giving all this stuff on this product, and the advertisers are maximizing their value, but what am I getting out of it? More frustration with the tool that I've invested 10 years into. In Web 3, it's a little clunkier, but what you're kind of starting to see is that people are paying for goods and services once again. And it's similar in that you're using a token, or you're using some form of transaction to get a good, like an NFT. And that is kind of revolutionary, because up until just 10 years ago, bank level encryption, digital payments didn't exist. I mean, this is kind of what's so unique about Web3. And so at the time when I started to learn more about Web3, I was like, this feels more local, this feels more indie, this feels like I can actually contribute to something that I care about, a cause I care about. And today, those are called DAOs, digital autonomous organizations. Think of them as like little local groups of people that maybe didn't get together because of their physical locale, but because of a concept or an idea or an artist or a band. And they're like, I just really like this Shibuya dog thing, and I really want to be a part of other people who like it as well, and let me get on this Discord community to learn more about it and participate. It feels a lot like local radio. And again, you're hearing it just from my own personal experience, having worked in that. And so in this particular context, I think that's what gets me really excited is, hey, look, there is a way now to build communities based off of ideas, not off of physical region or locale. And these communities are willing to engage and willing to give money. And if you're ever wondering why would they do it, going back to local radio, I just know that when you believe in something that much, you give. Now, Web3 has the potential to go really big. And I'm saying obviously $60 million in a DAO, or even more in that case. Local radio usually caps at around $20-30 million in terms of just the amount of money that they get through donations. But that's still big money, that's still pretty considerable. And so in this Web3 world, with Pixelynx, one of the things that we've found increases engagement around this idea of independent artists, independent DJs, new up-and-coming artists who want to share their stems or share other types of digital assets. We figured out that quests, they're called quests in the gaming world, are really, really great ways to get people super fired up and super engaged. A quest could look like this. Hey, we're going to do this special event. The event is take a photo of take a photo of you at this one particular location you love, and then go to this Discord, go to this Discord, maybe send a special message, cross over onto Twitter, broadcast it, and then come back. And if you do that, we'll have a leaderboard to see who accomplished the task, how quickly did they do it, and rank who are the diehards essentially. And we've done this pretty regularly for the past year, and it's very successful just because it's asking the fan, if you want to participate with other fans, let's just give you a quest of something to do together, build a relationship from that, and then along the way you can sometimes win prizes, or you can sometimes get special access to something that you wouldn't otherwise. And so it really kind of is I feel like a really nice model, at least something that the gaming community has sort of transferred over, and we're using it quite often. But there's also other types of engagement as well.
One of the things that, as I'm listening to all three of you talk about, is, for many of you who have been on the receiving side of pitches, there's been all of these artist-to-fan apps over the years. They've almost all failed for the same reason, which is, guess what? An artist is an artist. The artist wants to tour. The artist wants to go in the studio. The artist does not want to go into the app and message their fans and to spend a lot of time doing, spinning up, 10 different direct-to-consumer platforms. So this feels like through gamification and through more scalable technology that we could actually see this artist-to-fan relationship thrive at scale, where we have never really had that before. How does, in all of your worlds, it isn't scalable for platforms to just go from artist management team to artist management team. Everybody has to kind of want to do this. So talk a little bit about the artist's motivation. I mean, why is the artist doing this? Is it because money can transfer directly between fans and artists? Is it because there's further benefit to owning your fans? What is it that is motivating the artist to engage in all of your platforms?
I mean, I borrow from some of these answers. I think that at a very high level, two powerful things are happening here. One, corporate Fortune 500 level community building technology is now available largely for free or for very small pricing to independent artists, and they own it, right? Prior to that, you had to be a company developing really complex software systems and CRMs, or you had to have a Facebook group or something like that, which is owned by Facebook and goes away as soon as they feel like it, right? So now you have this technology tool set that is truly owned by the creator, and that community is truly owned by the creator and the fans at a cost that is many times, even in OneOf's case, free. Two, when you were talking about the percentage of streams that you elicit of these remixes versus Spotify, boy, oh boy, as an artist, would I want to know about the 100,000 fans who love my work enough to spend hours remixing it versus maybe the 120,000 fans who passively click play and then immediately move to the next one while they're doing their workout, right? So you have this ability to scale with technology and to really understand and collect first-party data on the people you care about most. And I think three, and this is something that artists are now realizing, I once had an artist say to me, which I thought was a great question at the time, well, listen, I've got a passionate and small fan base. I can either try to fill up, this venue next week in New York, or I can tell them to go buy an NFT. Why do I want to tell them to buy the NFT when I only have a certain amount I can message my community, and I really am going to make more money off that show? And I think that was a really great question. And I think it was a question precipitated by sort of the fact that we were looking at NFTs as assets and not as fan engagement tools. So what I said to that artist, and what I would say to that artist, is these NFTs, in many cases, you should be giving away, and you should have been giving them away back then. And you should have made, the best seats at your show limited to token holders so that the data of the people who care about you the most, which you don't know. One of our founders helped Pearl Jam release their famous self-bootlegs on the internet. And the reason they did that was because they don't know the most passionate Pearl Jam fans who come to the show and collect a bootleg because Ticketmaster has that information. So I think what artists need to realize is they have this vast tool set to scale deep community building. And they don't have to actually do much more. They just need to apply the principles of that to all the stuff they're already doing, to their merch, to their shows, to people, remixing their work. It's a turbocharge across the board for their existing methods of making money. And as I said, I can't talk about it, but pretty soon we're going to announce a very big thing in sort of the more traditional way artists make money now, which will do exactly that for that discipline. So it's the level of effort. We don't want artists to change their behavior. We just want to supercharge everything they do by helping them identify the fans that care about them most and reward those fans at scale with minimal effort and make those fans feel like partners, not just people who, appreciate the artist.
Yeah, it's well said. for all the same reasons, technology is getting simpler. These capabilities are becoming more democratized. I will say that, something that you said, Chris, kind of really resonated in the sense, speaking about the local nonprofit work and being a DJ. I was also a DJ for nonprofit KZSU 90.1 way back in the day. And what resonated with me is, when there isn't that financial motivation necessarily, you can be really authentic. And Web3 is really governed by a lot of values, where what we're seeing now, Vickie, to your point, is like artists are leaning into these platforms because they want something different. And a lot of these platforms are ad-based, and they have to sublimate their financial and cultural dignity to like play attention games and try to get on the top of some algorithmic feed. Where when you're dealing with artists in the Web3 world, and as they filter down to these kind of hardcore fans, they can be their true selves and authentic, and that's a lot of what we're hearing at Audius is where they can participate directly with the fans, engage with them, fans can engage back, and I think that that's important. And a lot of us now are making buying decisions of our money and our time based on values. If it's not like buying local, from a local provider or from a local farm or some climate-friendly, carbon-friendly, manufacturer, it's like Gen Z is actually having more income to spend, and they're spending it with their values, and that's, I think, what is also resonating a lot with the Web3 world.
What I'm also hearing from you, and Chris, I want to get your opinion on this too, is in a Web2 world, we have followers. We have fans that follow artists, and we have people who are passive and, maybe they're liking something on a social platform or they're streaming. But what you're really talking about is more participants, and that it isn't necessarily all the volume, and all of the business models we have now are volume-based, the volume of streams, the volume of fans, all of that. If you don't have hundreds of millions of streams in these platforms, you will not make any money. But in this world, it kind of goes back to Amanda Palmer and some of these other artists who have always talked about having 1,000 true fans and having a small collection of true fans who want to engage differently. They aren't satisfied with just clicking a like button or a stream. So, Chris, let's hear a little bit more from you about, co-founded by deadmau5 and the team, so obviously very artist-centric at the core. What is it that's motivating, artists to want to engage with Pixelynx and Chorus?
I think the first thing and I really appreciate the way you framed it, I think the first acknowledgement is your fan is a stakeholder. They're a stakeholder in your brand, they're a stakeholder in your business, and we respect that. We respect that every artist is a brand, and they can choose to work within that construct however they see fit or not. But the key is that whatever they're doing is leading to building more stakeholders. And stakeholding could mean I'm financially giving you something, but stakeholding could mean I'm gonna use your IP, remix it, and give it back to you in the community, because we can grow the value creation, grow the wealth, both financially but also creatively. And as the artist, really, you're kind of saying, look, I want to foster this, I want to nurture it, and one way I can do it is by supplying content, supplying some initial information that they can then use in their own way, make it their own, but still be part of a collective and benefit holistically. And so, I think with sort of deadmau5 in particular, he really respects his fans. He's always really considered them as stakeholders. And in his particular case, he also has a really high bar for just quality, and the work that he does, I think, demonstrates it daily. And so he kind of sort of sets his level of integrity the way he sees fit, because he understands that his stakeholding community loves the things that he does accordingly. And so when we've started to partner with other artists along the way, we've really been open to saying, it's on your terms, right? We want to work with you. Here's kind of the structure of what we're thinking about, but if you don't feel comfortable in a certain way, maybe you don't want to use the lyrics or maybe you don't want to use stems, or maybe you want to try some other idea. Right now, we're still very open to that because, again, in our ethos, we want to kind of help every artist build their brand or build their community the way they see fit. So to, sometimes internally, I always remind myself, like, this is not product market fit. This is community market fit. And we're trying to enable every artist to build that community so that they get the right fit. And really, as a technology company, we need to be as flexible as we can and kind of build, the right tool for the job, if you will. I mean, that's, I think, what usually most tech kind of mindset is. And at the same time, be fluid enough to understand, does this make business sense, right? Does this make brand sense? Are we just building tech for tech's sake, or we're actually really trying to empower people? And in our case, it's so much easier to know that we are an artist-friendly company that wants to empower artists to do it their way.
So talk a little bit about, thinking about the audience, and that we're here at Indie Week, lots of record labels and maybe independent artists. How can people participate? Like, what is it going to take? It seems like there's a lot of self-selection at this stage where artists and artist teams are like, we have unmet needs, we want to try out this technology. How can we scale as an industry? How can we get more people to participate in this? Is it about getting more artists on board, getting more fans on board, the tech getting simpler, all of the above? Anyone?
I mean, I think it's all three, right? You can't teach people a new way of consumerism and also introduce a new idea or project to them. You have to either introduce a new idea and they have a familiar way to participate in that, or you have to have a familiar way to, or you have to, you just can't teach people two things at the same time. So the tech has to get simpler, which I think it really has. Number two, you just need more people in the tent, period. One of the reasons, we started working with brands, to the shock and horror of some of our music fans, was because we realized that these large commercial brands contain, just by raw numbers, more music fans in their databases than just about anywhere else other than the mainstream artists themselves. So you just need more people at the party. And then you need artists to be able to, again, especially independent artists, at no cost in most cases, leverage this giant community, create a project that doesn't require overhead, and that has the chance to not only generate revenue on its own, but dramatically amplify the revenue they generate in traditional streams. And so that's why at OneOf we're rolling out this self-mint that will allow artists to mint literally 1 million free NFTs for free or for $20 in a couple hours, right? That ability did not exist and actually doesn't exist really in the world right now and will very soon. But it's all good to mint 1 million free NFTs if there's only 10,000 people in the tent who can possibly grab one, right? So I think it's all parts of this industry working together, making the entire ecosystem bigger, and then giving artists the tools to, with surgeon-like precision, carve out their chunks of that ecosystem, reach people they're not reaching, and like you guys are saying, really reward the people that are their super fans, that are completing the quests, and acknowledge them as the backbone of the artist. That's some of the other stuff we're going to be releasing is, how do you identify as the biggest Taylor Swift fan in the world? Because I'm sure most of the people that went to their concert consider themselves that. And that applies for independent artists as well. So I think it's a lot of scaling, but then it's giving independent artists the tool set to go into this big, vast ocean and only collect the things that matter to them very quickly, and monetize that immediately through the existing things they're doing in their business.
Yeah, I will say that it's happening. Artists are leaning in. Labels are also trying to figure out what these new models are. I mean, you're hearing it from the top, from Lucian Grange at Universal to asking for a new model, Robert Kinsel from Warner, all the way down to the indies and Artist Direct. We're finding the limits of the streaming model. When the only option is to raise the price of a $10 a month streaming service, that's really not it. And now we're realizing that there's a lot of hardcore fans that are out there that are willing to do more. I mean, if we're willing to drive for hours to attend a concert or a festival and be there at 10 a.m. on a ticket pre-sale and spend a lot of money on box sets and premium packages, that needs to be better captured and served up for the artists. And now there are these capabilities that Chris has mentioned that we're also offering. So I think it's just a matter of time before it happens. Remember, streaming was started in 2000. It took like 15, 17 years before it really kind of went mainstream.
Yeah, and Spotify started by making all the major labels owners of Spotify. So, its rise to prominence was about enlarging the tent from day one.
At Pixelynx, we definitely we're really interested in working and finding the right partner artist who maybe has access to their song licenses or their stem files, and figuring out a new way in which, through the help of generative AI in our particular case, to start thinking about a remix culture that they can build. Again, sourced from them, and at the same time, the community grows. There's also, through NFTs and blockchain, other ways to do just different types of licensing models, and different ways to kind of really, in some ways, even bring back the mechanical license and say, streaming, thank you, but now we can actually charge more than $1 for a download. In fact, we can charge $100 for a download because the superfan wants it. And so, at the same time, indie labels who equally have just a catalog and saying, we believe one of our artists would be comfortable with a sort of remix culture, or any UGC community being willing to use a generative AI tool that is safe and secure and wouldn't do anything that would, again, challenge the integrity of a song or its stems, and really being willing to work with us to explore that model. That's definitely where we get most excited about.
It's really exciting because it's also reintroducing the concept of ownership back into our economy. We probably have time for one question if there's anyone in the audience. If not, okay.
Yeah, and just I really like what you guys are doing. And
Here's a mic.
And from major label perspective, because I talked to a few of them, and they told me that the opposite. They kind of, not really into like the Web3 yet. I think in order for the community to go big and really we need to get like major label involved one day, and which is like, because so you were saying that they trying to find a new ecosystem. I'm curious what's the conversation like, because I was only talking to A&Rs, but what's the conversation like with major label right now for Web3 in a like higher level, their like perspective? Yeah.
So we're dealing directly and in deep talks and or partnerships with all three majors in a very fundamental way. I think it may feel like Web3 is not happening yet with them because they're not using it as a buzzword, because they realize that NFT has negative brand equity. But they are absolutely transforming their loyalty programs into Web3 powered programs. They are using the technology under the hood in ways that all smart large businesses would. And I actually think that Web3 can be a real equalizer for independent artists and major labels because of the aforementioned technology and community building advantages. But these labels are all the way in on this right now. They're just calling it by a different name because they want to reframe the discussion. It's not the outside shiny part of the car, but it's definitely the engine. And so I would say, this whole world has gone from like this world of fantastical, almost mythic-like opportunity to like what seemed like a very depressing and wasted place. And I think now it's actually a very pragmatic time for everyone to get involved, because the utility, not utility as we talk about in NFTs from artists to fans, but the usefulness of this technology for artists is here. And make no mistake, the major labels are aware of that and they're acting accordingly. They're just not issuing press releases about it just yet.
Oh, yeah.
I think the other important aspect here is, we never, innovation always happens on the fringes. It is always the independent artists and people who are who are trying to innovate and push the boundaries. And, and when you're a, major publicly traded company, and you have a catalog of artists, they're always going to be thinking about how can we take our entire roster into this world. And it isn't necessarily that. It's really about artist by artist, and that is a challenge to major rights holders who are not accustomed to thinking that way. But I do feel, I also agree, I feel like they're all trying to figure it out, and figuring out now, like fan clubs. That's been something that I think has in the olden days of street teams, it's kind of atrophied over the years. So how can we light that back up again?
Yeah, my first job was at Loud Records with Steve Rifkind, who invented the street team. And now I'm doing a pretty similar thing, and I'm not putting posters up in the streets. So to your point, things do come full circle.
Excellent. I think we need to wrap, and we have another panel coming up next on monetization, but please a round of applause for the panelists.